As of right now, ladies and gentlemen, we are doing another cast over, and you can hear it in the background. The music has changed. Cosmonarchy Year 2 of competitive play. I mean, I like to think that it officially started when I did that cast over, but really, it feels like it starts now with the new music by Nozlix. So shout out to that man, and hope you guys enjoy the new tunes. It's a 9-minute track. It goes through all the different races. And we will indeed have an update to it when the Escozi are ready to rumble. At least as far as like when that particular part of the track is ready to rumble. I think that'll come before the race, but we'll see. Nonetheless, here we are talking about Neblime versus the Shambler. We've got 2 games on Impetus. Let's get rolling. Now, one of the things that I think is really important to point out here is Neblime will be starting at 12 o'clock as the Zerg, with Shambler being in the bottom as Terran. Shambler been practicing his Terran. He will actually be deploying that particular race in the context of, what would you say, the upcoming Invitational. We do have that Invitational coming up. Again, I encourage people, even though we have a full house right now, sign up. Tell us your availability. You never know when we are going to need a ringer to, replace somebody who has maybe just like some bad run of circumstance or forgets about things or whatever. So you never know when you'll be called upon. We already have a ringer for Group A in Hamster, who has signed up as his Terran, so that'll be interesting if we need him. But of course, there are more slots available for that. So, without further ado, Cosmonarchy, what the hell is this thing? Well, you can already tell that it's a different user interface. We've got different geyser graphics on the space platform tile set. And over here, harvesting Vespene straight from the source, that's allowing the Shambler to go for a Fulcrum first, which is the mech opening. He was just talking about some of the balance changes that have happened, where Terrans no longer require a unified text structure in order to access add-ons. Previously in Cosmonarchy's history, that was the case. Now, this is Impetus, a map with a fairly decent distance between the main and the natural, including the ramp, and something that Neblime has had to contend with in the past is going for an expansion first on a map like this. Most of the time, Zergs tend to go for an in-base hatch instead, because in Cosmonarchy your workers are more efficient, so you can get more value out of one base than in stock Brood War. That being said, though, obviously Shambler is going to go ahead and confirm that there must be something like this. I don't think he got close enough to see it with his worker, but yeah, he's going to confirm it just now. And one of the things that we're going to keep track of is what is the follow-up here. Shambler going for a stockade behind his Fulcrum, which means he's going to be supporting his walkers. Oh, he cancels it. Maybe that was a mistake in that he wanted a Fulcrum instead, and he thought he put that down. So that's a little bit, catching a little bit of a kerfluffle there, but that's all well and good. Something that he's going to have to just remind himself of and contend with in the future. It's interesting because the the sort of in progress frames are different for the Fulcrum compared to the Stockade, and the Starpad uses the same graphics as the Fulcrum, but it's occupying a smaller space, right? So you could kind of surmise based on building placement and like grid alignment if you're really seeing all the little details there. Eventually, we should just obviously have like a set of improvements there where like each structure has its own unique set of construction graphics, but we're a ways off of that. Definitely something worth thinking about. Now, that all being said, the Cyclops has arrived. This does leave behind a delayed burst effect that deals only damage to enemies. It's like smart munitions or whatever. This Droleth was trying to mutate into a static defense structure, but it looks like it'll be the Quasilisks to hatch. Just Shambler moving his Cyclops a little bit too close, I think. Ooh, and look at that, even a drill on the other end with the worker to decollide it one extra time. And with the Quasilisks, they do move fast enough that they can avoid the Cyclops shells. That 2-second timer there is something that you can play around, and so absolutely something to expect. We do have a Circuith now mutating here for Neblime at his natural. He should be out of the woods, but during this time, yeah, Shambler talking about the fact that he had to cancel his stockade into a Fulcrum, and then, that obviously did lose him some tempo. Now he's going to type. Shambler's known as a typer. Fulcrum. Yeah, that's my favorite. Now, he does have 2 Cyclops here. On Cosmonarchy, you have that cliff advantage. Gives you +2 weapon range when firing down a cliff instead of having randomness as the advantage. And that is going to allow him to riposte any sort of would-be attack here. Neblime already well aware. Neblime's actually won a tournament in the last year. He won the final tournament of 2023. So he is absolutely aware of some of those mechanics. Those are no different here. Going to go ahead and burrow a Quasilisk. You get burrow by default in Cosmonarchy. You also get siege mode. All of the researches that you would normally have to spend money on, they're just enabled by default. They're rolled into the unit costs. So if you pay for a unit like a Phalanx, which is, you know, beefier, bulkier, but also more expensive than the siege tank, then you should absolutely expect to have to suffer that initial upfront cost, but you get the benefit of not needing to research anything to begin with. So this is going to be the siege, and this is interesting. I haven't seen people use this newfound strategy where you get access to the Palladium from the word go instead of needing the Atlas, which is the tier 2 tech structure. We'll keep watch if that even comes into play in this game. We already have a Zorki's Shroud coming, so Lakizilisks are on the way. Those are the lurkers, and they will indeed be trying to zone this army out. But right now, I think he's kind of bought enough time using the Circuith. He does have this sort of, funnily enough, it's called the Phalanx. He's got a Phalanx of Cyclops right here. And so, obviously, that is going to be more than enough to deal with the initial Quasis. But he has no star pad, so and no stockade, right? So there are two different ways you can go for detection in this game as Terran. You can go for a stockade with a Vestry add-on, and that gives you access to healing units like the Cleric, which is formerly the Medic, but also the new unit, the Shaman, which when deployed, like the Phalanx, gives you more healing range, but also detection. That is the one particular option that you have. Now, on top of that, you can also go star pad into the Antseal, which is a supportive, protective unit. Now, the Lakizilis just revealed its position there. I think maybe Shambler thought he might have been within range, but he absolutely doesn't want to. He doesn't really want to commit over here with the Phalanx in this way. It is drawing a lot of the units in, and 2 out of 3 Lakizilisks have already fallen. When you stand on top of the burrowed units, you reveal them, and so that actually allowed his Cyclops to do a lot of the heavy lifting there because the Phalanx did take so much fire. But there are still Quasilisks, and most crucially, the Zoroastrian, a very durable unit that when you attack it, just releases a Rillarokor, a brood spawn, and so that obviously is not going to help Shambler's situation. Trying to surround it, it is going to work out pretty well. You can see the Phalanx in tank mode does actually tank. It has 4 armor. When you deploy, you lose all that armor, and that's why the one that was deployed earlier got absolutely shellacked, but it's not to be here. Now, I guess one thing that is happening over here is that Shambler is buying time with that Phalanx. He does have a nice SimCity being erected back at home. He still has not taken his expansion. He's behind by 7 workers. So Neblime is going to be able to go for a more like macro-oriented approach here, as is his general predilection in these sorts of games. He is going to go ahead and take his third. That's going to be at, I'm going to call it 3 o'clock. It's a little bit like 2.5 or whatever, but that's fine. And so we do indeed have an expansion on the way for Shambler, but he's not really able to make use of it just yet. Got a lot of minerals, does Neblime, but that's all right. I'm sure he'll be putting it to good use, and he's probably thinking about what kind of tech he wants. He's adding another Hatteros behind his Vespine line and adding a Hydrith Den now. So, okay, so he's going to be going for all 3 tech structures that you have available at Tier 1. You can mutate the pool and the den into, like, Tier 1.5 things for a little bit more of a gas cost, but it gives you tech tempo, so that allows you to evolve some of your units and unlock some new units, like air units and such. So we should be seeing, I want to say at least like one of those things, but if Neblime doesn't get contested any further from this point, you know, if Shambler decides to just turtle in, then we actually could end up in a tech race instead. Now the anchors have lifted off. The lobotomy mine will indeed freeze that Zethra before it can get too far, and the Phalanxes will do plenty of damage in there. You can see where, like, the lobotomy mine obviously is completely different than the spider mine. It doing that stun effect and then slowing them after the fact is really, really good when partnered with the Cyclops with that latent shell that takes 2 seconds to pop. And also, of course, it's really, really good for the Phalanx, which obviously now has a mortar, so it's not just an instant hit. Okay, just a little tickle here to remind Shambler that this thing exists, apparently. Not sure what that was all about, but probably just saying hi, poking your head up, seeing what's going on. Some basic defenses being set up. The interior 12 o'clock being taken now by Neblime, so absolutely something that you would expect as he's just sort of stretching his legs and trying to take as much map control as possible. Now, this interior 12 o'clock is fairly open, right? You can attack it from 2 different angles, but I think with Neblime taking 3, it feels like, you know, okay, if he takes control of this ramp with something, then you have to go across this bridge in order to get access to this angle of attack. Otherwise, you're probably just going to drop back here, right? So we'll see what Shambler wants to. You can see up here this icon that looks like that weird flower. That is the Iral Iris. It's right over here. This is a structure that as soon as you put it down, it's signaling that you want a lot of tech, because that is 900 Vespene that could have gone into other sources. But here we are. Looks like an Ovoleth just moving over here to scout. Ovoleths obviously are also the transports. You don't have to research the transport, you know, the Ovoleth speed or the fact that it can transport. So this looks a bit spooky. One thing to note is that for new players, if you are going to build detection and you detect a transport, you can then click on it and it will tell you what it has in its cargo. Or if it doesn't say anything, that means that there is no cargo. So Shambler doesn't know that there was no cargo, but when he kills it, he knows it. So there is that. Now we have exactly what I was just talking about here. I was thinking he was going to secure the ramp, but this is another way to do it. If you just secure this bridge as Neblime, then you really only have to worry about this sort of south western attack path. And now you can see Neblime thinking of controlling this bridge as well by dropping down another Hacharosk. So with all that said, more and more units are being deployed. More and more structures are being created. I think he's probably going to make a sort of wall of like anti-air defenses. Although these could also be Larvosks. It's interesting. I'm not sure which one he's going for. And yeah, just trying to stretch his legs, get all this economy operational. You know, this is versus 2 base Terran. You're probably wondering, what chance in hell does Shambler have? And it doesn't look good for him right now, but he could potentially take advantage of Neblime going for so many different tech options at the same time and not really making a large army, right? Neblime has 16 military units. This counter in the top right is worker over military. So yes, he's dwarfing the worker count of Shambler, but he doesn't really have any military, right? He's not been pressured into making any. So it feels like it's probably going to be too late for Shambler to come back into this particular game. But, you know, if he's able to riposte all of the aggression, if he's able to maybe get a good scout off, he is going to go ahead and take his own 9 o'clock for a 3rd base. And if he can get 3 base operational versus the 4 of Neblime, then that isn't too terrible, right? Obviously, the worker count is definitely going to be in Neblime's favor for the foreseeable future. But Neblime needs to, at some point, actually make military units. And you can see he just made 14 pairs of Zethra-cores, so that is going to spike his military count up quite nicely. We've got 2 more Fulcrums coming. Still no Atlas to be seen. Capping geysers on the Neblime side, this is a pretty big deal, actually, because when you cap your geyser, it increases the yield by 1 for every return that you make. And so it goes from giving you 4 Vespene to only giving you 5, right? And so that doesn't sound like a lot on paper, but when you harvest resources as fast as you do in Cosmonarchy, it does add up quite a bit. And the structure only costs minerals, so it's not like you have to pay back your investment by spending Vespene on it. So when you cap it like this, it is going to give you a bit of a spike in income for gas in particular, and that will probably enable some really scary strategies out of Neblime. Right now, he's mostly dumping his minerals out on Zeths, Vorvs, Zoryusthaleths. There are some Hydras being built. We do see some Mutas as well. We've got a small spattering of 6 of them coming over here. The deployed Madrigals should riposte them quite nicely, as well as this Watchdog to the south, dealing some more upfront damage. So, you know, it's just poking his head in, seeing what's going on. Feels a little anemic as an attack, considering all the economy that he's got on his disposal. But Neblime is playing it slow, just seeing what the changes are like in the new sort of ecosystem that we have. And look at this, Shambler immediately trying to leapfrog his position from taking this 9 o'clock position as his 3rd. He might want to just go straight for 10 o'clock and take his 4th. But little does he know, there's a lot of Kagrants being put down over here. The terrain is being subsumed by the Zerg. A lot of idle workers here and there. Kind of a low-action game to start things off, which does give me the opportunity to explain some of the more intricate aspects of this game and what's different about it compared to StarCraft 1, or maybe even your other favorite RTSs. We have got even more tech being added. Each one of these tech structures enables 3 units because we have an average of 50 units per race in Cosmonarchy. So when you see like the Matrable Nest or the Alcag Eteth or whatever, you got to get out of the Brood War mindset where that structure enables 1 or 2 units max. No, these always end up enabling 3 units. And, you know, depending on if they're mutated, like this used to be the Hydrith Den, now it's the Swamp, the Tethith Swamp. This gives you access to evolved versions of the units that the Hydrith Den gave you. So that's just sort of like the way that Zerg in particular works. Now here's going to be one of the first major engagements of the game, where the pressure obviously is on Neblime to do something about this situation and use his resources to his advantage. His Bactylisks weren't really in the fight to start with, So it took them a while to actually get rid of the clerics, and those phalanxes, they held really, really strong for quite a while. That being said, the mutas also weren't part of this fight, and, I don't know if this ministry is going to make it back over. The madrigals are doing their best to deploy so that they can maybe zone away the mutas. Yeah, I think it should be able to survive just fine. You do need to fall away from that. The madrigal works such that it fires one missile for every target, and each additional target adds a little bit of a delay before it fires, a missile at the first target again. So there is a little bit of a natural balance there where you can overwhelm the targeting sensors of the madrigal, but it's pretty hard. They fire pretty fast, so that obviously gives it a pretty heavy benefit in those kinds of engagements versus Zerg in particular. You just need to get units, keep units off of them, maybe keep sustain around them. The clerics here using their nanotechnology to patch up the vehicles. Yes, there's no like biological or mechanical flag in the game that dictates what the cleric can or can't heal. So it's sort of like you can also repair Mavericks, right? Because you can repair the bio suits, the suits of power armor that are being worn by the bio units. Now, this is a really, really big moment here. Matrolets have been deployed. They have this aura around them. That's what that green overlay is. That basically gives you Ensnare as an on-hit debuff when your unit attacks. And so, yeah, okay, you're setting up your phalanxes, but this is a spooky spot for both players. Like the madrigals are going to be able to do a lot of damage here. Another ministry was made and can be used to leapfrog maybe into top left, trying to split the map horizontally. We can see Neblime thinking about where to move his units, because he's probably realizing, oh, I've allowed Shambler to actually build up an army, be fairly defensive. He's got all these anchors now. These are completely empty, but Neblime doesn't really know that. And another reason to maybe build detection so you can see whether or not they're empty. Here come the Matrolets. They're going to go ahead and deploy the Vilgalets. These little greenish eggs give access to the Rillarocores that you see spawning over here. They convert the corpses into them. So that's actually very, very useful for Neblime, as it gives him a little bit of a buffer in front line. And yeah, he found the perfect spot on the map where there were no defenses, right? These phalanxes were up here at the 9 o'clock position. Obviously, there's this big force that's going to charge in. I'm not sure that they'll get through all the madrigals, but they are going to make them sweat for it. Phalanx is rotating out from 9 o'clock to try to save the natural, but even if they save it, there's all the mutas over here, and most of the anti-air is gone, right? It's just the watchdogs now. Those madrigals did fall. Tetzoricores sustaining themselves by dealing splash damage. They heal for all the damage that they deal, so that obviously is going to give them a lot of value, ripping apart a worker line. And Almaxilisks have also arrived. Some pretty high damage dealing units. They fly in over here and just finish off basically the things that were holding back the floodgates there, the madrigals. Yeah, it's not going to be enough now. So it's just a total flood, and Shambler does eventually end up losing. But you could kind of see how if Neblime had continued to sort of be idle, be on the macro side, play the peaceful game, he could have potentially been surprised there by the Shambler, and the Shambler could have maybe done a 1-2 punch on it. He was making his Atlas, so it was eventually going to be time for Tier 2. It was very late, and the early pressure and the build order stuff definitely fluffed him there. But that is the Shambler versus Neblime. That is kind of how things go, where Shambler tries to be aggressive, Neblime tries to be more laid back, and eventually it ends up like this. Shambler practicing. Terran, known as a Zerg player, has off-raced his Protoss before. Not really played Terran, but he's felt called to with the new changes. We'll see if the Shambler can bite back in the second game of this set. That'll be releasing tomorrow. Thanks, guys, for checking out Cosmonarchy, checking out this video. Of course, we will be back with more content, so drop a sub if you like. Join us on the Discord server if you want to play this thing. And yeah, pretty soon we're going to have some exciting announcements, I would say, hopefully in conjunction with the upcoming March Invitational on the 2nd of March. So stay tuned for that as well, and we'll see you on the server. Peace.